All right. I just want to call to order the January 10th, 2022. Quickly coming up. So, January 2022 meeting, I'll call that to order. Glad everybody can be here and attend this meeting. We have the agenda that was messaged out and emailed out. You can see it displayed on the screen now. Hopefully everybody had a little while to take a look at this. Do we have any addendums or amendments that we want to make to this agenda at this point in time?
Jason, I think you had brought up something that we need to discuss. What was that?
Was that around the RFP, around the dates, or?
I think we've got that covered in number 5.
Okay.
Thought there was something else, but Atlantic Broadband. That would be
Oh, the rename.
Yeah, that would be number
Under
item
new.
number 6 under new business, or item number 1 under new business.
Okay. Okay. All right. Seeing the new minutes and the change to the minutes, the agenda, does anybody have any questions or anything else to add to it? All right, hearing no discussion or anything like that, do I have a motion to accept the agenda?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
All right. All in favor of the agenda with the amendment to it, please say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. All right, we'll go forth with the new agenda. David, you have reports in here. Is that just that's just the approval of the November and December minutes?
Yes. I would move that dispense with the reading of those minutes, but that we accept or adopt those minutes. They're basically a recap of what's streamed on YouTube anyway, and we'll work on getting those up on the website. So I move that we dispense with the reading of the November and December meeting minutes.
Okay. What we'll do, David, is we will dispense with the reading of it, if everybody agrees, and then we will just have a individual motion to accept each one, so that way we can have a few minutes that they're online and have them scroll through, so that way if anybody needs to pause and read it at that point, if it's easier for them to do that or download it, they have that option. So does everybody agree with dispensing of reading of the minutes and adopting it that way? Do I hear a motion for that? Or I guess you made a motion, David.
Yeah, I'll second this motion.
Okay.
I do have one addition to the December meeting, but that's minor.
Okay. All right. All in favor of dispensing of reading the minutes, say aye.
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 All opposed, same sign. All right. Motion carries. Somebody had said aye, I was going to make them read all the minutes. What was that when you had the board meeting last time? You spoke up about something and they then assigned it to you because you spoke up about it. So that's just how that works, right?
Yes, I understand.
There you go. All right, so we will start with the November minutes. If you don't mind pulling those up. Then we can scroll through those. All right. Can't see that we're scrolling through them, but I know the live stream should be scrolling through now the November minutes. Can we go ahead and accept those as is? Anybody want to make a motion on that?
So moved.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right. November minutes have been accepted. All right. And we will now go over to the December minutes. And Mr. Thomas, you said you had a small change to these.
It's really addition under old business. It says Mr. Thomas discussed his efforts to place trailers at Jericho Church. And that should also say, and St. Stephen's Baptist in Central Point.
Okay.
And I believe we've got to work with the schools to do that, but just wanted to make sure that was part of the minutes.
Okay. Perfect. We will
Having added
amend
that,
those.
I'd make a motion to approve.
Okay. We will add those to the minutes, and we will have that posted up to the website for too long. All in. So we have a motion. Do we have a second for the December minutes?
Second.
All right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. All right. Motion carries.
Mr. Thomas, we might as well go ahead and make this change right now while we're here. And you said Jericho Church.
Jericho Baptist Church and St. Stephen's Church in Central Point. Those were the two when we originally said we were going to work with the schools to do the trailers. I'd made contact with people. System. So I know the schools are looking at doing more, and I wanted to make sure those two were part of the more.
All right. You got that, David?
Yeah.
All right. Do you want to share out your screen? And then we can do the update on the Vatti 2021? Or do you want me to share out my screen?
You can go ahead and share yours. Let me make that change to
Okay.
allow you to do that. I'm trying to play catch up.
Hear you on that one.
All right. You can share now.
All right. Let's see, that's going to be screen 3. Okay. So do you want to go ahead and give us an update on the 2021 Vatti grant progress?
Yep. So since we met in December, there's not been a huge change other than the fact that they still remain slightly ahead of schedule for the Caroline project. So again, just if you're public and you're listening to this, the fact that we did not get the 2022 Vatti grant does not affect the fact that we've already been approved and the work has already started on 2021. The last update that I received was that the fiber, the main fiber, is in place down 301 from King George, but it last updated, it had not been completely tied in yet. But that will provide the backbone for the expansion, both Route 17 North and 17 South. So they're making good progress on that project, and we're still on track to hopefully finish on time. There were 12 additional homes that were identified when they did the engineering study, so that means 12 more people than what we had originally thought will be getting broadband internet in that area. So that's all the update I have, Jason.
Okay. A question that I have around that, with the 12 new houses that have been identified, does that change anything? Do we need to take anything back to the Board of Supervisors or anything at that point, or are we good to go ahead and continue on with that as is?
I think at this point we continue on until we're provided with a detailed list of addresses. Nothing's
Okay.
official, but it does appear at this point that we may actually have 12 more houses. So.
Okay. All right. Any questions on that? Any comments? All right. I think it's good that they've identified 12 new houses that would be available for the broadband. So that's a good thing. Very good thing. Do you want to give an update on the railroad crossings?
Yep. Give me just a second here. All right, so I did receive an email from Mr. Schiebel as far as an update on the railroad crossings. The field work, field survey work was scheduled to start tomorrow through the 21st of this month, assuming that they can complete it with weather, weather permitting. So by the 21st of January, the field survey would work with a estimated start date. RFP railway submission would be around the 24th of January. And hopefully those submissions would be completed by February the 11th. And then it would go into the review process with RFP sometime around 14th of February and complete on March the 14th. So that's the field survey, permit work, getting everything ready to line up the contractor to do the work. So at this point, it does appear that hopefully, weather permitting, around March the 14th, we should be ready to start construction on that, according to Mr. Schiebel, the Director of Public Works for Caroline.
Nice. That'll be good. And that will also, we should be able to apply that inside of our next Vatti grant that we have been working with, those partners to go ahead and put in that railroad crossing. Is that correct?
Yeah, that is correct. That would be leverage that we've applied. The other thing that we do need to do some groundwork on is figuring up the leverage of the man hours that county employees are putting into these projects, myself included, would act also as leverage. So I think we learned some information, Mr. Thomas, myself, and the rest of the people in that meeting, that we definitely know what direction we need to go in. So we're starting to work on that as well.
I think these meetings might also count as leverage too.
I would certainly hope so.
Okay, that's good to keep in mind for the next when we apply for the next Vatti grant, to add these hours in also, any of these type of meetings. All right, any questions on the railroad crossings? All right, let's skip down here to the logo for universal coverage. Do we have any update on that?
The gentleman, Joey Robinson, is not here tonight and can't be because this is a school board meeting night. So
Okay.
We did have some information though. Again, it's probably not as critical as it was, since we're not going to be really using it in a lot of marketing from here on out, or any appointments to do marketing that we'll need it. But we do need to continue to keep that on the agenda under old business and make sure that we finish that up. Whether it's we had one member from the broadband committee suggest that he could probably do that for us if we continue to run into issues with the schools. So we'll follow up again next month to see where that stands, and hopefully we can come up with a logo that we'll be able to use in letterhead and other marketing materials.
Okay. All right. Any questions on that? Any more comments? All right, just turning into the David show. Alternate sources of funding update.
So we continue to work with Broadband Telecom to identify sources of funding. They continue to work very hard, conversing with me at least once weekly, and also sending emails and reports. But I do think that the committee needs to be made aware of a trend that I'm seeing. The last 3 sources of funding that were identified by Broadband Telecom from the federal government all tie, and this I find this amazing or interesting, but all 3 tie rural broadband projects to climate change monitoring, and all 3 sources of federal funding say that in order to have a competitive grant application, your project has to include some type of climate change monitoring equipment. So we do need to keep an eye on that. The reason why I think we do is it's also tied in that infrastructure bill. So if that money rolls down to Vatti, we have to make sure that that requirement doesn't roll with it, or if it does roll with it, then we need to make sure that we address that in our application so we don't have another blind side of something that would disqualify us. So we'll continue to monitor that, keep an eye on it. We have not seen any Vatti 2023 guidelines. It's still early for that, but once they come out, we'll make sure that we look at that closely. But I just thought it was interesting, and this committee needs to be aware of that direction. That the last time we had the direction of universal coverage from the state, now we're seeing a federal direction going in climate change monitoring. So we have to keep an eye on that so it doesn't catch us off guard. But that is something that we need to be aware of.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask a question? And
Yes, sir.
maybe it's something we ought to just discuss right now to get some quick ideas. But I remember in our successful 2021 grant, one of the things we talked about was having broadband and allowing farmers to access things like weather at their crops, or things of that nature. Would that kind of be related to climate change monitoring? As we monitor the climate, we're informing farmers, since we're extremely rural. We're informing farmers of the possible impacts that weather could have on them. Is that something we could say was a benefit?
What do you think, David? I'm not.
I believe it can be, Mr. Thomas, and I think that there's probably some creative stuff that we can do to do that. I have to look back at those guidelines to see whether it says monitoring equipment, which I think it may. But that's something that's pretty standard. So if that ends up being a requirement for the 2023 Vatti grant cycle, then we would need to include that requirement that the contractor we work with do something along the lines of installing equipment to monitor climate change. I would assume like a CO monitor or a CO2 monitor or a temperature monitor, something like that. However, my concern is that it's a requirement of a lot of these funding sources. However, there's not been the required establishment of who do you report this to. The other thing that kind of concerns me is this a precursor to there having to be EPA approval for these types of projects, which would add a roadblock and also slow these projects down quite a bit if you have to go out to EPA to get an approval before the project would start. So just some of the things that we're watching, and we'll see what the final impact is. I do have a meetings, or we're in the process of setting up a meeting next week with Broadband Telecom. For now, we'll say ABB, and myself to start looking at last year's application. We've gone through and identified probably somewhere in the neighborhood of 35 to 40 more points that we can get by doing some things just a little different. So we're going to start working on that, and climate change or climate change monitoring will definitely be one of the topics that we discuss.
The other thing is, with all of the solar applications we're seeing in the county, tying those into another application might be a good idea too, because that's an indirect climate change concern.
And one opportunity that I do see is that if that equipment is required, then we partner with some unique partners, which would help us in our application to install these monitors at their location. So we could use it to establish some unique partnerships, which would strengthen our application as well. So we'll keep an eye on it, see what direction it goes in, and react appropriately to.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. So that's the update on the alternate sources of funding. David, do you want to take back over the screen share to go over the RFP discussion?
Yep. If you want to, I think you have to unshare. So I'll kind of lead this discussion. Alan Parton has been working tirelessly on coming up with the RFP since this was decided. We have a starting point of a new Kent RFP that was released, and we're using that as a template for ours. Jason Jacobus and Mr. Barlow, myself, spent some time last night discussing this and making necessary changes. It does appear that that new Kent application may not have been as tied to a Vatti application as we would intend ours to be. So we did go through the changes. I think at this point, what we can do is just kind of scroll down through here. Everybody has a copy. The yellow, some of those, you'll see some comments from Mr. Parton in the right column. And then there's also some yellow and green that we've added. So anything that's highlighted is something that needs to be addressed. I've talked to Mr. Parton. A lot of the changes that we made last night addressed a lot of the questions that he had. However, I will have a meeting with Mr. Parton and Mr. Cully probably later this week to finalize this RFP. Hopefully it'll be ready to go on the street shortly. So if we go down through here and we look at just the highlighted areas or comments, of course, the RFP number that will be assigned once this is ready to go out. The first real question that we had, and it's a reason for discussion, and we had a long discussion about this with Mr. Parton as well as with Jason and Jason last night, is the timeline. We don't want to make it too long, but at the same time, if we make it too short, we may discourage some quality applicants from being interested. So we're thinking 30 days is probably too short. 60 days, if, for example, the RFP goes out on the street, we don't get any responses, and we find that there's something in there that is preventing anyone from responding, and we wanted to make a change and get it back out, we could possibly go through 2 cycles of RFP and still have time to submit an application if we keep it at 60. If we went 90 days, of course, that would add 60 days to the entire process and make two cycles probably not possible. So at this point, is everyone in agreement that 60 days is probably long enough for companies to respond, and not discourage good companies, but yet we don't want to drag it out too long either, because we have a lot of work after the RFP comes back. So if we don't hear any disagreement, we'll recommend to Mr. Parton that we stick with a 60-day time frame. Is that okay with everybody?
Yeah, David, I'd agree.
All right, so we'll stick with the 60-day time frame. Not hearing any complaints with that. And then a lot of this is just legal stuff. We don't have the ability to timestamp, but we do have the ability to date stamp. So instead of saying by 2 p.m., we'll just say end of business day. And then we have figured that if we go with a 60-day turnaround, no later than 14 days prior to the end of the RFP, they can respond with questions. They would be directed to me, and we would respond to those questions, hopefully in time to give them enough time to complete their RFP and submit it.
If we go 60, our RFP has to be as concise and have as much information as possible in it. That's the only concern I'd have.
And this thing is 20 pages long, so it's I don't know about the concise part, but it does have a lot of information. So if we go on down through here, and we'll at the end, we can always reconsider that if we feel like. And under the purpose, we added that the responses will be weighed using the previously approved strategic plan, and we will provide them with a copy of our previously approved strategic plan with the RFP, so they can see that we're giving weight to hardwire over wireless, and that would answer any of their questions with the RFP. And we want to make sure that we are clear that this RFP is simply to establish a public-private partnership for the purpose of a Vatti grant. We don't want to establish any contracts or anything that would extend beyond the announcement of a Vatti grant. Makes it kind of easy because all of the contract parts of the private-public partnership are established as part of the Vatti contract negotiations, so that's pretty straightforward. And then there was a lot of language in here about the length of the contract, but all of that is dictated by DHCD and the Vatti program, so that makes that kind of not really null and void, but the contract would not extend beyond the Vatti, and also would extend however long it's required by Vatti. If there are requirements of the provider to be able to maintain records for a number of years beyond 36 months. So, but all that's spelled out in the Vatti guidelines. Now, we will provide them at this point, since we're going out before the announcement of the 2023 guidelines, we will provide them with a copy of the 2021 guidelines to act as a guide. But unfortunately, we don't have 2023. I think if we provide them with 2021 or 2022 guidelines,
Yeah.
It's not going to be a lot of difference. Changes from year to year are usually, even though they may be a major change like what we saw this year, but the number of changes is relatively small. The language in the original was allowing for more than one company to be awarded. However, if we award the same area to more than one company, I think that's going to probably discourage people from responding. So we'd be looking to partner with one provider to cover that area. We will provide them with a map and an Excel spreadsheet of addresses of the area to be covered. And again, we just want to keep reiterating that the purpose of this public-private partnership is for Vatti DHCD projects. The big one is the awardee agrees to provide all necessary information, written and otherwise, well ahead of the deadline for the 2023 Vatti grant. That's the whole purpose of us going out with this RFP. So we don't want to go out with an RFP, find a company to partner with, and end up in the same situation that we did last time, with being 5 minutes till the day of the deadline, and we're having to pry information out from the partner. So we want to be clear about that in there as well. And you'll see as we go down, a lot of the requirements in the RFP itself will require them to actually give us a large majority of the information that we need for the application. So if they follow the deadline and they submit that ahead of time, we'll have plenty of time to work on that. Again, attachment A will give them a map of the area to be covered, as well as the addresses.
And David, we do have one option in case there's a lack of responses here, but the county has a public-private partnership ordinance, which means that anybody at any time can submit a proposal to the county. So if someone were to come up with a proposal I guess before or after. We'll have to check with the lawyers about that. But if they came up with a proposal, they could submit it to the county and the county could accept it at any time.
Okay, that's good to know. Thank you, sir. Again, a lot of these time frames on here, the contract is really not going to exceed the announcement completion of a Vatti project. So the 60-month time frame, I think, is a requirement of Vatti for record keeping purposes. So now this is one discussion that we had. If we went with 100 megabits download over 100 megabits upload as a minimum, and then also they would be ranked or scored based on their maximum speeds. My question is that if we go with 100 meg down and 100 meg up, if you see over in the comments, most of your asymmetrical cable company connections do not provide symmetrical 100 over 100 as a speed. However, the fiber system that ABB is putting in does have the ability to be able to provide symmetrical service, but it's not a standard internet connection. Much more expensive, a completely different ball game. So I think we could change that to just so we don't discourage the cable providers that are likely going to be interested. If we change that to 100 meg over 25, I think would probably get us more responses to work with. And again, we would wait. If we did have a provider that says they can give us gig up, gig down fiber, then of course they're going to score higher than somebody who can only give us 100 over 25.
Does it say in there that higher speeds will be scored better?
Yes. In my comments over to the right, which you guys may not be able to read off the screen.
I can read it.
No, I mean in the actual RFP, does it say that?
Well, that's some of the suggested language that we have is that higher speeds will score a higher rating by the reviewers.
Okay, perfect. That's great.
So what we're doing is we want to set a reasonable speed so we don't discourage quality companies, but at the same time, they need to be aware of, they need to give us the best they've got to offer because we're looking for a quality system.
I say scroll back up real quick because I definitely want to call this out, which is A, I believe. Keep going up just a little bit. Keep going up. There you go. So it's A provides, this is where it deals with data caps. So we actually added language over in the side. You can see that is definitely something that we want to have disclosed at the time of the RFP if a broadband provider does have data caps. And maybe we should add something in there that, oh, well, we do have that and will be scored accordingly. So that way, if we have a provider that comes back and says, oh, well, we're going to give you 100 over 100, but you only have 200 gigabytes of download before you're capped, then we will definitely be rating that accordingly, versus somebody that does not have a data cap. Because we don't want to have, when you're streaming television, you're streaming, Amazon movies or anything like that, that will definitely eat up your broadband, cap if they do have one. So I think that was definitely something to call out inside of there.
And a lot of the public is not aware that even with the two providers that we have in Caroline right now, Comcast does have a data cap unless you're in one of their very upper level premium packages. They do have a data cap, and it's really large. Most people don't hit it, but what we're looking to do here is have them disclose that kind of information at RFP submissions so that we're aware of it instead of not asking and having it catch us off guard, after the system is built. So
And that's a great point. So people that are eventually, or citizens that are eventually on this system will know ahead of time.
Correct.
Great.
We proposed adding to the original this requirement that DACD guidelines follow the 2022 grant process and must be provided at the time of responding to the RFP. So we give them a copy of the guidelines and the requirements for the 2022, and we expect them to respond with, if not all, then a vast majority of the data that's going to be required for the application. So. We also proposed that under, I guess this is kind of leverage, but yeah, this is leverage assets provided by Caroline County. We proposed adding in the RFP CAD services provided by the Department of Planning, providing maps and addresses of the proposed area to be designated as attachment A. This one was in the template that we were using. However, the county's procurement process will consist of a design verification phase followed by the deployment phase. We don't have the ability to be able to second guess whether a system is going to be able to perform like promised during the design phase. So therefore, we're just gonna we changed that verbiage to make sure that the system meets or exceeds industry standards. We'll let the engineers do the engineering, but we don't have an available engineer to verify that, and they will be required prior to final payment to provide, speed tests at the location, just like they are now. In the 2021, they will have to provide speed tests to prove that they are attaining the speeds that they've advertised. So I think that's already addressed by Vatti. Number of copies, one original, 2 copies, and a digital copy. Kind of outdated verbiage in my opinion. If you have the original and you have a digital copy, you can make as many copies as you need after that. So in their application, they're asked to identify any proprietary information. That's one thing that we got scored lower on during the last application because both cable companies, Comcast and ABB at the time, are not really willing, or it doesn't make good sense necessarily to make public the pricing on their equipment, the pricing of their labor, for example. So while we do need to be more specific this time around, there is a Foia exemption that can be filed to prevent that from being made public. And a lot of this is has the Virginia code section, so we did try not to mess with anything that's has a code section. Now we did ask, we did look at this, and for example, one of the groups that we would hope to get an RFP from is a broadband authority that may not have 3 references. Since they're an authority, they probably work for themselves for that county, so they would have that 1 reference. So we didn't want to limit that to just companies that have 3 references, because we would knock out the possibility of a broadband authority looking to partner. And the State Corporation Commission, they'll have to provide. A lot of this is required by Virginia law to prove that they are a legal corporation and that they're licensed to do work in the state of Virginia. So this is just legal comments here that we really don't want to mess with. The partnership that was outlined in the template that we were following called for ownership or revenue sharing to the locality. We've never required that in the past. We definitely want to stay away from ownership because localities themselves, I believe, are prohibited from being an ISP. So we don't want to get into that. And we haven't in the past in our successful application. So we'll probably, we ask that they remove that. All the requirements for financials, all that's required by Vatti. They'll get that in the 2021 guidelines, so they'll be aware of that. You guys let me know now if you're seeing something that you disagree with, because while Alan has started working his way through the changes that we submitted, we don't want to make a lot of changes, but if there's something substantial that needs to be changed, we can do that. A lot of these are forms that are required by state law. The SEC form, certification, no collusion, insurance requirements, proprietary confidential information, W-9, contact form, so we know who to call if we have issues. And again, all of this is requirements. Every one of these is requirements by DHCD in Vatti. So right here again, they specify data caps. We added that as well. So we want to know about data caps as well as speed and latency. The contract wanted to establish a process where all invoices submitted to the county would be paid within 40 days. However, there's a payment schedule that would have to be negotiated with DHCD. In general, the successful one that we're in now breaks payments into 4 payments, 3 months apart. So I think that would be more appealing than trying to do payment, just invoices coming in constantly with a 45 days to pay. So we would defer to the standard DHCD payment. And then there's requirements, drug-free workplace, employment discrimination by the contractors prohibited. A lot of these are just legal requirements of doing business with the county. Unauthorized aliens prohibited, indemnification, insurance requirements. So you see there that's just pretty much boilerplate requirements of forming a partnership. There's some interest in it. They have to maintain the documents, and again, that will be negotiated further with the contract with Vatti should we get to that point. We'll have the solicitation for the RFP will be on the county website. And then safety authorization to transact business in the Commonwealth. Again, all just standard legal requirements by the Virginia Code section. Every one of those had Virginia Code section. So, and then the insurance requirements, again, standard code requirements with amounts. No need for us to touch that. and then the proposer's signature sheet. So hopefully, once we get the rewording done and the paragraphs added and the lines added and deleted as suggested, then this will be ready to go on the street. Like I said, we're going to do our best to get it out this week if possible. If not, hopefully next week. I will send a notice out to everyone on the broadband committee that the RFP is on the street once that goes. But does anybody have anything glaring that sticks out that needs to be addressed while we're going through this? Or if not, we'll continue to move forward as suggested.
David, how many houses are we talking about?
How
many addresses, I guess?
It ends up being somewhere in the neighborhood of about 900. I think it's 897 because if you remember, we already had 400 or 500 in the last application. Now we've combined those with the last 400 or 50 or so that were not addressed. So if you add them together, it ends up being right around 900 homes. So what we're looking to do is cover the entire area that we were looking to partner with Comcast on, plus the unserved area, unserved houses that we were looking to partner with Comcast on in a phase 2. But it's obvious that 2023 is going to follow 2022 as far as its requirement to be able to address universal coverage in a single application series. So we have to address, we cannot use a 2-phase approach to cover it. So that's why we're going out RFP and asking somebody to give us a solution to cover the whole thing in one grant cycle.
Got it. Thank you.
Any other questions? That was a good question. All right, Jason. I guess that concludes that.
So do we need to do any sort of motion around this or to adopt this to take it forward, or do we just put this back into
I would think if we do anything, let's just we could have, I move, Mr. Chairman, I move that we recommend this, the suggested language in the RFP.
Okay. Do I have any seconds?
Second.
All right. Any comments or anything on it at this point?
Yeah, the committee already authorized, or I guess not authorized, but agreed with the RFP process itself.
You're talking about the Board of Supervisors, right?
No, the committee.
The committee originally did, yes.
Yeah. So we've done that. It's not on the board's agenda for tomorrow, but I think we could try to get it on the agenda for the end of January so we can start moving ahead.
Does this need to be on the board's agenda? Because we brought it up at the board. They agreed to it and told us to move forward with it at the December meeting.
Yeah. They also authorized staff to produce it and go to the street with it. So.
Right. I mean, that's just another point. I think the only thing we're doing now is we're confirming as a committee that we agree with the language that's in the staff generated RFP so far. So
yeah, we'll just I think we're just endorsing the changes that were made so that we just had more, we just had a lot more sets of eyes go through it with us kind of quick, but to make sure that there was nothing that was missed. We spent a lot of effort last night going through that thing. So I think we're good. And if everybody's okay and there's no more changes, again, my motion is that we move forward with recommending the proposed changes to the template.
Okay. And I think Jason Jacobus seconded it. Anybody have any no more comments or questions? All right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. All right. There you go. We'll move forward as is with the new verbiage. All right, David. I think I think that concludes all the old business. Do we have any? We have one new business that we added just a few minutes ago. Um, is there any, before I move forward to new business, I apologize, any other old business anybody knows of that we missed? Okay. So at this point, we'll jump forward to new business. The only one that we put in the new business was I got an email today or a text message from one of my friends just letting me know that ABB, Atlantic Broadband, had changed its name to Breeze Line. Just so that way people know that that has happened. So if they start seeing any trucks with Breeze Line on the side, I don't know how quickly they would change some of their information or flyers or so forth, so on. We wanted people to understand and know what that company was. David, I believe you had a little bit more information about why they changed their name. Did you want to give a little bit of update on that?
Yeah, it was not necessarily, they haven't been acquired by anybody. There's no ownership change. But the fact that they've been aggressively expanding has taken them off of the Atlantic coastline, where they're moving more into the Midwest, especially with the acquisition of some systems in Ohio. So they wanted a name that was more inclusive of the rest of their intended service area. But there's not been an acquisition. They haven't been sold. They haven't been purchased. It's still the same company with just a different name. And I apologize to everybody in advance because I still call MetroCast and what was it, Mr. Thomas over here, Cablecom?
They were Charter, and they were a whole bunch of things.
That's right. They were Charter, and then MetroCast, and then they've been through some different things, but some of those involve changes in the company, which we're not dealing with right now. So it's just everybody in the public and everybody on this committee and know that when we start moving forward with 2023 applications or 20 that we're going to be dealing with a different name but the same company.
Okay. All right. Any other new business anybody wants to bring up or discuss? All right. Not hearing any other new business or anything like that. I guess the only other thing we have left to discuss is the meeting for the month of February. I think the 21st we are safe. It's President's Day. I don't think the Monday prior to that's Valentine's Day. So I think it'll be better to push to the 21st, which would be our normal third Monday of the month meeting. Do you think that'll be safe, David, as far as the RFP, or do we potentially need to meet a little bit earlier to,
I think I think staff has already gotten authorization to go on the street with RFP. So I think that's going to be an automatic thing. As soon as we have it ready with the language changes that we've suggested, I think it's going to go on the street.
Okay.
So I don't think any further action is really required by us until the time that the RFPs start coming back in. Then I feel that we're probably going to be the primary evaluators of the RFPs and have to weigh these things. So it's going to be some work involved. I hope that we have about 10 of them to evaluate, but I've got a feeling that's probably not going to be the case. But we do have some upcoming work. But as far as from now, I think we're ready to go on the street. I think we'd be fine to go to the 21st.
Okay. Does anybody have any objections to the 21st at this point? That'd be February 21st, 2022.
Hopefully, if we can dispense with the reading of the minutes at that meeting, we can try to keep it right around an hour, which is our goal that we're trying to do, because we know your time is valuable, and the pay is not great for your service on this committee. So we want to try to keep it as efficient as possible. And I think not reading through those minutes will help that.
Sounds good to me.
All right. Well, at this point, we'll just say Our next meeting will be at 7 p.m. on February 21st, 2022. And hopefully we'll have a ton of RFPs already in by that point. You know, we'll have a lot of scoring to do at that point.
Yep, and we'll have to discuss the scoring process and try to get some volunteers from this committee to help with that, because it's going to be a little bit of work, but I think we're heading in the right direction.
Okay. All right. Hearing no other any other agenda items that we need to touch on, does anybody have a motion to adjourn?
I move that we adjourn.
All right.
Second.
All right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. All right. Again, guys, thank you for your time, and I look forward to talking to you on February 21st.
Mr. Thomas, we'll see you tomorrow night.
Yes, you will. Looking forward to it. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, guys. Bye.
Take care.